but the sad thing is that we sometimes get to that point where we're just so comfortable, we take Mickey for granted. We just think we know Mickey. So just so that I can understand the level that I'm dealing with, the background of your knowledge, let me just ask a couple of real simple questions here. Yeah, we debated about birthday and anniversary. I believe it's Mickey's birthday too. What is the month and day of Mickey's birthday? November 18th. Okay. Maybe not. When was Mickey's third birthday celebrated? Okay, Mickey is 3 years old. In those days, they called it Mickey's birthday.
No, that's not
The LA Times phoned the Disney studio to confirm when is Mickey's birthday. When was Mickey's third birthday? October 24th.
Oh.
Okay. So let me help you out here a little bit. Again, 3 years old, so nobody's really thought about these things. Got that? Mickey's fifth birthday. Okay. This time they talked to Walt himself, and Walt himself said, "This date is Mickey's birthday." When did Mickey celebrate his fifth birthday?
April.
October 1st. Walt told the media October 1st is his birthday because that's when we started his first cartoon, which of course Walt was lying. Because Plain Crazy was started in April of 28 and Steamboat Willie was actually started the end of August 1928. So October 1st, where that, okay. Let's try and make this even easier. Mickey's seventh birthday. By now, Mickey is hugely popular. All right? Mickey is hugely popular. In fact, in that year, Guy Lombardo wrote the Mickey Mouse Birthday Trot, which I'm sure all of you sing. And Floyd Gottfredson drew a special Mickey Mouse comic strip to celebrate Mickey's birthday on his birthday. There were parties. So Mickey's seventh lucky birthday, it was called his lucky birthday, was celebrated on September 28th. Okay, it's like, what?
In a 3
My
month
mind is blowing up. Okay, you
a lot
have
of damn
to
presents. I want that, man.
you have to realize that we talked about the Disney business. All right, what happens in September is kids go back to school, right? And what happens is you're not really going to get audiences into theaters again until the Christmas season, right? So Mickey's birthday was celebrated anytime between mid-September and mid-November to try and stir up theaters to rent Mickey Mouse cartoons to have a Mickey Mouse birthday party in the theaters to drive in some attendance. It wouldn't do any good to have it, during the spring or the summer or whatever. You have to have it during the fall. Well, eventually, you're going to have to come up with a particular date, okay? So let's jump ahead. 1968. By 1968, the Disney company should have their stuff together, right? It's Mickey's 40th birthday. And in fact, this is a very important birthday because that 40th birthday is when all of that nostalgia started for the classic Mickey. The pie-eyed Mickey, and so there's a lot of new merchandise coming out. There's people rushing to antique shops to get, antique Mickey Mouse watches and all of that. And there's going to be a celebration at Disneyland There's going to be a short parade, not like the type of parades we have now. There's going to be a short parade. You're going to sing to Mickey Mouse. Kids are encouraged, to bring a present to Mickey Mouse. Most of them brought cheese. All right? So, Mickey Mouse's 40th birthday, when was it celebrated? We know it's probably not November 18th, right? September 27th. And why was it September 27th? Because it was a weekend. So you wanted to pull people in on a Sunday to Disneyland. So that's when that birthday was. Now, the problem becomes, my gosh, the 40th went over so big. There's information in magazines and in the newspapers. People are all stirred up about the classic Mickey and all of that. My gosh, we better come up with something that makes sense. Well, fortunately, in June 1970, Dave Smith was hired as a Disney archivist. And one of the first things that he was given was, Mickey's going to have a 50th birthday in 1978. We got to have an official birthday for Mickey that makes sense. So it is Dave Smith who said, I think it makes sense to say it's when Steamboat Willie premiered. Because even though that's not the first cartoon, they made Plane Crazy, it was only shown in one theater one day to get an audience reaction and also to try and get interest from film distributors to distribute the Mickey Mouse series. They weren't interested. Same thing with Galloping Gaucho. But with Steamboat Willie, it premiered at the Colony Theater in New York, ran for 2 weeks, then it went to the Roxy Theater and ran for another 2 weeks. So at that particular point, you're getting all of this newspaper coverage and all of these great reviews, and this is the first time that the entire nation is talking about Mickey Mouse. So he says, okay, when Mickey premiered at the Colony Theater, that will be, that will be his birthday. And so then Dave had to go back.
Sure. Anything else?
And research because nobody could really confirm when was this cartoon shown. So he had to go back through newspapers. He had to. He finally pulled out a program so that we know now that November 18th is Mickey's birthday. So for Mickey's 50th birthday in 1978. That is the first time Mickey celebrated it on November 18th. Up until that time, it could have been Walt didn't even know. What does our budget look like? Get some kids into the theater. We'll do a Mickey Mouse party. Actually, for the for Mickey's 7th birthday, every single print of a Disney cartoon was out at theaters, had been rented for theaters, because this was such a big deal. So we go with that, and it's like, gee, I didn't know. And I know all of you are thinking about this because you're going to share this with your friends and family. Not one of them is going to say, gee, did you hear this from Jim Korkis? They're going to go, you just know so much about all this stuff as this goes. And so, we always just assume we know these things about Mickey. We just take it for granted, and we don't. All of you have seen Mickey, right? You've seen Mickey multiple times. You notice he wears those red shorts. Of course, he didn't always wear red shorts. When Mickey merchandise first came out, he had green shorts. Because the Mickey Mouse cartoons were black and white. So nobody had any idea what color they were going to be. So even the Charlotte Clark dolls, they actually come in 2 different versions, one with green shorts and one with red shorts. Okay? And he's wearing shorts, which in those days were called knee-high trousers, because that's what a young boy would wear. I've gone back and looked through Sears catalogs and things like that. They sold shorts like that. Frank Thomas, that's why I love talking to you guys, because I'll talk to 20-somethings and I'll say Frank Thomas, and they go, huh? They're like raccoons in a headlight. What is that? Frank Thomas, one of the 9 old men, a classic animator, told me that Walt always thought that Mickey was a young boy of about 9 to 10 years old, but with the capabilities of a 14 to 15-year-old. And so that's why he's wearing shorts. You know, when John Hench drew the 25th birthday portrait of Mickey, he went to Walt and said, well, I'm going to give him long pants. And Walt says, no, give him the shorts. And Hench says, but he's the most successful mouse in the entire world. You know, he's been around for 25 years. He should have long pants. And Walt looked at him. John Hench told me this story himself. He says, Walt looked at me and he said, you know why he's wearing those shorts? Because I like him wearing those shorts. And so John painted the 25th birthday portrait with the shorts. It's got those 2 buttons. Actually, there are 3 buttons. You don't see the 3rd button. And no, it's not on his butt. 2 buttons. Because this is why when you do Disney history, you can't just limit yourself to Disney. You have to look at the context of what's happening in the world at the time. Those 2 buttons there, for a young boy, didn't have zippers. So you had the 2 buttons so that you unhooked a flap so you could urinate. Now, that 3rd button I talked about, that's that button at the top of the pants to keep the pants together, and it's invisible. You don't see it. It just laps over. But again, people don't remember why those 2 buttons are there. So as you take a look at Mickey over the years, the buttons shift into different positions, and they also get larger, because then it becomes a design element for that to happen. Now remember, Mickey is a young boy. That's why he's wearing those large shoes, okay? Because he's a young boy dressing up in his father's shoes to try to look older. That's why Minnie is in those large high heel shoes. Those are her mother's shoes. All right? She's trying to dress up like her mother. Now the other reason too is it hides their feet, so it doesn't look like little mouse feet. You now think of it, you don't think of that as mouse feet. And Mickey's white glove, right? What color is Mickey's hand without the glove? Black. Now what happens when he moves it across his black torso? Disappears. In animation it's called reads. It doesn't read. So you have to have that white glove in order for the audience's eye to still follow. And also, it gets rid of his little mouse hands. You know, now you have those gloves. And those 3 lines on the back of the gloves, those are darts. You know, between that were on gloves that children wore back in the early 1930s. You know, it helped pull between the fingers there to keep it there. That's why the 3 lines are there. But all of you have just taken it for granted, right? Just it's like, well, Jim will come in someday and tell us about it. Jim will explain that poor Minnie Mouse only had 1 pair of panties. During the Depression, she did. Well, you notice because she had the little short skirt, and she would bend, and you would see her little bloomers, you know, had a square patch. She couldn't afford another pair of panties, so she had to repair the pair she had. Isn't this obvious now? Yeah. And you go, oh, you know. I don't even have to work hard. I don't even have to explain to you how Mickey Mouse killed King Kong in the original 1933 film. There is film evidence. You have seen it. I love that. I love that original version of King Kong, and the work by Willis O'Brien. You know, one of the reasons King Kong looks so real is that Willis O'Brien would stick in his hand, you know, to move the figure. As he did that, sometimes his thumb or fingers would depress the rabbit hair, and they'd take a shot, and then by the time they took the next shot, the hair would ruffle back out. So when you see King Kong, his fur ruffles like a real character for that to happen. Mickey Mouse killed him. Oh, Jim, we laughed at most of your jokes. Okay. In 1931, there was a Naval Air Force base, the Floyd Bennett Naval Air Aviation Reserve in New York. And one of the pilots decided, this is 1931, Mickey is becoming popular, they're going to paint a logo on the fuselage of their airplane. You know, that happened a lot during World War II and all that. They didn't get permission from the Disney company, they just did it. And so Mickey Mouse is riding on this goose, and the goose is wearing goggles, and it's carrying a bomb and a Navy trident. And in the back is a silhouette of the Statue of Liberty. Okay? All right, that happens. It's a small little what is it? Okay, December 1932, RKO goes to the Navy and says, we want to hire 4 of your pilots to fly around the Empire State Building, you know, for B-shot, you know, for certain background shots, you know, for a movie that we're making. Navy turns them down. So RKO, the publicity guy, goes directly to the commanding officer of the Floyd Bennett Aviation Base, and he says, look, we'll donate $100 to the officers' mess, and we'll pay the pilots $10 each. You know, for doing that, we're only going to need them for maybe 2 hours. And they had no idea that the Navy had already rejected this, and they said, sure, we're going to do that. So they did. So I actually got to talk with one of the pilots. His name was Lieutenant John Winston, and he said, we had no idea. They just said, get in your plane and go up there and jazz around the Empire State Building. We were told it was some film, but we had no idea what it was. And so they went up there, and the RKO cameras filmed the planes coming in formation, and then splitting up, and then coming back and circling around and all that. And they intercut 28 of those shots into the film, along with miniatures and process shots. If you take a look at the film, you will see on the fuselage is the Mickey Mouse logo. Mickey Mouse killed King Kong. And in fact, in 1933, when Kong came out, 8 months later, there was a Mickey Mouse cartoon release called The Pet Store, where there is Mickey is running a pet store, and they have a huge ape who was used for movies and all of that, and he sees an ad for King Kong, and he goes crazy. He breaks out of his cage, he grabs Minnie, he climbs up a bunch of boxes of bird seeds stacked to resemble the Empire State Building, and birds come and attack, and he swats them away and all of that. Because Walt knew Marion C. Cooper, who was the producer of King Kong, because in 1933 he was talking with Marion C. Cooper about doing a Technicolor animated feature, Babes in Toyland. This is 5 years before Snow White. But those negotiations fell apart. Walt actually talked about a lot of projects before Snow White. He had one with Will Rogers, Rip Van Winkle, where you would have the live action Will Rogers, and then the little men and everything else would all be animated. But Will Rogers passed away in an airplane crash, and so, you know, that went south. You know, there's always so much to know about this. And speaking of, I can move somewhere where you can see me.
No, I need to stand.
Got it. Speaking of military logos, the first official Disney logo was in 1939, military logo, 1939. That was the Flying Tigers. That was designed by Roy Williams, who we know as the big musketeer. And in fact, you can see a representation of that over at Disney Hollywood Studios on the side of Rosie's. They have the actual first emblem insignia. Now, Disney didn't keep records of any of this because this belonged to the military. And so the military came in and would take all of that material. So any of the war propaganda films that Disney made, they took all of the scripts and the storyboards and the pencil artwork and the cells and all of that. But you know, it wasn't, and Mickey, of course, is such a nice guy that he only appeared on less than 3 dozen military logos. And most of those were like the chaplain unit or communications or whatever, because he was never considered, you know, very aggressive or whatever. Donald Duck, on the other hand, appeared on over 200. He was the most popular requested Disney character. However, that did not stop the other side from using Mickey as a logo. And so there was a very popular German flying ace in the Luftwaffe, and he painted his own Mickey emblem on his fuselage. It had Mickey smoking a cigar and an axe in his hand. And after the war, they asked him, well, why did you do that? And he said, well, because I like Mickey Mouse and I like cigars. Mickey also appeared on a German U-boat, U-26, which was in service for several months and sank 11 Allied ships. Pretty amazing. You know, this stuff. You know, and even though Hitler and Mussolini and Emperor Hirohito tried to ban Mickey Mouse, they were all huge fans. Hitler, huge fan. In fact, Hitler had his own little private film library. He had a copy of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which he felt was the greatest film ever made. And again, you need to look outside Disney history, you need to look in other things. So I ran across the diaries of Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels was the propaganda minister for Hitler. And there's an entry in December 1937 where Goebbels writes, I have just gotten 18 Mickey Mouse cartoons to give to the Fuhrer. And I know that he will really look forward to this because in July, he watched 5 Mickey Mouse cartoons in a row and couldn't stop laughing. So Hitler had his own little private, collection of Mickey cartoons, but he tried to ban it in Nazi Germany and did end up. Why? Because young people were wearing Mickey Mouse buttons instead of swastikas. And Mickey Mouse was so popular and so associated with the United States, and you wanted to trash anything associated with the United States, that they ended up banning Mickey Mouse. And Hitler, in fact, told the rest of the Axis countries, you need to do that as well. Well, Mussolini had a problem, because Mussolini liked Mickey Mouse. Not only did Mussolini like Mickey Mouse, his children loved Mickey Mouse. And so they banned every American comic strip except for Mickey Mouse. And then eventually they had to ban the Mickey Mouse comic strip. Emperor Hirohito, huge Mickey fan. In fact, when he passed away in 1989, he requested in his will, and it was followed through, that he be buried with his Mickey Mouse watch. And he got it at Disneyland, by the way. And you guys all know about the story of the stone lantern, right? In the Japan Pavilion out here at Epcot? Okay, when you go into the Japan Pavilion, over on your right is a stone lantern, okay? It's traditional, it's authentic. It was given to Roy E. Disney in October of 1971 from Hirohito as a gift from the Japanese people to light the way for success and happiness. And so for many years, it was over at the Polynesian Resort. And then when Epcot opened, they moved it over there. And I talked to Imagineers, and I said, well, how come you don't just stick up a little, a sign, a plaque? People would be interested. And they said, no, that's the story of Disney. It is not the story of Japan. And we are telling the story of Japan in that pavilion for that to happen. Isn't this all fascinating? Yeah. For this to go through. Walt, of course, did the voice of Mickey himself because he was the cheapest guy they could find. And that's what he said. He said, we pulled in other people, and I tried, to direct them how to do it, and they just couldn't do it. And somebody said, well, you're always going to be here, right? And he said, well, yeah, and you don't have to pay me. So he did that. His mother, however, felt that the voice sounded too feminine. And that always irritated Walt. But when Walt passed it on to Jimmy McDonald during Fun and Fancy Free, Mickey and the Beanstalk, he told Mickey, don't have him give you long speeches, because it's just a very narrow range, Don't have Mickey, go, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or by taking arms. No, it's better to say, come here, Pluto. Oh, what? As that goes through. Harry Teitel, who was a Disney producer, told me, he said, no, Walt wanted it short so he could come in and do it and get out. And one of the reasons Walt turned it over in 1947 to Jimmy McDonald is because, first off, Walt was getting very, very busy. He couldn't keep coming down and recording these things. And also because he smoked so heavily that his voice had gotten very hoarse. So he couldn't hit that exact register. Except, something that a lot of people don't realize, is when the Mickey Mouse Club premiered in, you can come take a seat.
I like to stand too.
That's okay. When the Mickey Mouse Club came out in 1955, Jimmy McDonald was down there doing, the voice recording, and Walt came in and he looked at the person recording and said, I do the voice too. And so Walt stepped in, and so for the Mickey Mouse Club, that is the last time professionally that Walt did the voice of Mickey Mouse. Each of those little daily segments, which were about 25 seconds, that's all Walt there doing that. And the animation for some of those segments done by Ollie Johnston. For that to happen. So again, very, very popular thing. I keep looking at my watch, not because I'm bored, but I want to be time sensitive. Because you can ask me the time and I'll build you a clock, as some of you well know. And as I said, I was a junior high school teacher, so I'm in love with the sound of my own voice. So I can go on forever and ever with all of these with all of these things for that to happen. We talked about Mickey's shorts being both green and red. So how did it finally become red? That happened in 1933 when Kay Kamen came on to handle merchandising. He decided, there needs to be some consistency. And so for his merchandise catalogs and all of that, Mickey always wore red shorts, and so it was always red shorts from then on. But up until that time, it could have been anything. Mickey sometimes wore green shoes, because he was black and white. How could you tell what color is what? And in fact, if you watch some of the black and white cartoons, if you look at the title cards, sometimes he's wearing striped shorts or checkered shorts. for that. And if you go and tell people about those 2 buttons, and they go, no, those are there for suspenders. No, Mickey didn't wear suspenders. And if he was going to wear overalls, he would get into a pair of overalls, as Farmer Mickey, for that to happen. You know that when Epcot opened, Mickey wasn't there. And the reason for that is the Disney company had determined that the characters lived at the Magic Kingdom, and that Epcot was going to be complementary to that experience, not in competition to that experience. However, when Michael Eisner was brought on board, he was being given a tour by Dick Nunis through Epcot, and Dave Venables was there. I don't know if any of you know Dave Venables. He was actually the first male manager of guest relations. And so I got this story from Dave. And they had been walking through Epcot for about 20 minutes, and Eisner turned to Nunis and said, it's odd. We've been here about 20 minutes, and I haven't seen, Mickey. And Nunis explained to him, well, this is an educational experience. The characters live, over, at the Magic Kingdom. And he said Eisner's eyes popped out of his head and the tongue rolled out of his mouth, just like a Tex Avery cartoon. And he says, that stops as of now. And 2 weeks later, you had Farmer Mickey in the land, you had Spaceship Earth Mickey out front, of the park, and all of that. And so, of course, then Imagineers have to rush and come up with why does this make sense? And so it's, yes, the characters live at the Magic Kingdom. They're on vacation at Epcot visiting their friends, like Snow White in Germany, or Alice in the UK. That's why you had that double-decker bus with suitcases along the side. They're on vacation. At the Hollywood studios, they're working at the studios. That's why they're there. That's their job. And then when Animal Kingdom came on board, they're on safari. And so that's why you can see that that's why they are there. The Mickey costume character, the original one at Disneyland in '55 was borrowed from John Harris's Ice Capades, because Disney had no need for a Mickey Mouse costume, so they borrowed the costume. So when you're watching some of the old videos, like Dateline Disney, which is the opening day of the park, and you see this horrendous Mickey Mouse, it's because that was for an ice skater. That's why he has those sharp teeth and then mesh, so he could look out, so he could see where he's going. All right? And remember, these were costumes that were designed to be seen at a distance for just a brief amount of time. Not up close, and not for an extended amount of time. Now, they realized that, you can't keep borrowing the costumes from the Ice Capades. So Disney tried to make their own costumes. They would make the Three Little Pigs with rebar, so it would be like 40 pounds, to carry that around. And again, they constantly made mistakes. So like with the Three Little Pigs and with the dwarves, they made it in such a way so that your hand could go up and, wiggle the nose or wiggle the ears, but that meant it wasn't down the sleeves. So they, so it's like, Dopey, give me an autograph. So a lot of trial and error for that. And again, there were no standards, so Mickey Mouse in costume could be up to 6 feet high. Ron Logan from Entertainment was telling me about that. So it wasn't until 1961 that they established that there needed to be height sizes for the characters, especially for Mickey. And they brought in John Hench to design the Mickey Mouse costume. And it went through a lot of different things, because Hench said, the proportion is all wrong. So we tried to make the head huge, you know, so that it looked. We tried to make him have a huge big bow, you know, so that would work. And they went through it and they went through it. That's why Mickey wears long pants, is so that you don't think about the mouse legs and all of that. Originally, he actually wore just regular black shoes. It took a while to come up with the big yellow shoes for them. And so all of this is a gradual process, and all of this is a lot of hit and miss, and making it up as you go along. And while I like talking, are there any questions you guys have about Mickey or about anything else Disney? You know, you need to get an opportunity. You took the time today and came out here, had a nice lunch, but, you know, you want to nourish your mind as well. Any questions that you have? Yes?
The tail.
Yes. Walt thought of the tail as a living thing. In fact, in one scene, Wilford Jackson, who was a terrific animator, had animated it, and he came in and Walt yelled at him and said, "I thought we went over this, Jackson. You know, Mickey is angry, so he's angry over his entire body, including his tail. All right? But what happened during World War II is most of the animators are overseas. You know, they've signed up, they're doing military service, and so they eliminated Mickey's tail. Walt called it a bobtail Mickey. And today, Disney says, no, Mickey always had his tail, he just tucked it into the back of his pants. And after the war, then it came back. As a costume character, you can't have a tail, because I will tell you, having been both a face character and in fur, having a tail is a real temptation for somebody to grab it and yank it to see if they can pull it out or whatever. So in the park, he has his tail, it's just tucked into his pants. Huh? Yeah, you never know, right? You never know. Well, and again, it's like with, how come Mickey has just 3 fingers and a thumb? Well, by not having that extra finger, you're saving over 45,000 drawings for each 6-minute short. So it saves time, it saves money. Also, Walt said that if you had a full 5 fingers on such a little character, it looks like a bunch of bananas in his hand. You know, by having that, again, it makes it look like a young boy. Makes it look like somebody who is younger. Are Mickey and Minnie married?
No.
Walt thought they were. Walt was a very conservative man. He would certainly not put up with somebody dating somebody for 90 years and never marrying them. You know? No. Walt, in an interview in 1933, said, at the studio, we think of Mickey and Minnie married. You know? But they play single people on the screen. He says it is like George Burns and Gracie Allen, or Jack Benny and Mary Livingston, both of whom were married in real life, but in the movies, sometimes on the radio show, it was like, oh no, she's playing his girlfriend or whatever. The reason that Disney gives now is that being married is an adult thing to do. And so since Mickey and Minnie are not adults, they cannot be married. Russi Taylor told me that. I was out here at Epcot many, many years ago with Russi, and when Wayne Allwine, the voice of Mickey, was still alive. And I said, you know, I tell all my groups that, yes, Mickey and Minnie really are married in real life, because, you know, you and Wayne are married, you know, and so don't ever get a divorce. And Wayne goes, oh, I would never divorce her. He took it very, very seriously, and Russi had to calm him down. And then Russi said, no, getting married is an adult thing. And if they got married, that would confuse kids, because kids associate with them. You know, they empathize with them and all of that. If they're married, suddenly now it's into another realm. Now, some of you are sitting there and going, how am I going to remember all of this stuff? That's why I wrote a book. It's called The Book of Mouse. And I'm going to autograph that for some people here today. I brought a couple of extra if anybody wanted. But if you were really smart and clever, 3 weeks ago I just released a brand new book called, and it's on Amazon, called Secret Stories of Mickey Mouse. And this includes over 100 short stories of Mickey Mouse. Each chapter is a page to 2 pages to 3 pages. So I talk about the Mickey cartoon, Mickey in Vietnam, which was not made by Disney. I talk about other cartoon characters that tried to impersonate Mickey Mouse. I talk about King Kong. I talk about some of those things. And again, because people's attention spans are shorter, that's why it's a bunch of little short stories. It has a nice yellow cover called Secret Stories of Mickey Mouse. So you can pick that up for under $20. Book of Mouse I like because it has a complete annotated filmography. So I list every single Mickey Mouse cartoon and list who was involved in doing it, what the cartoon is about, and then additional notes. And when I say every Mickey cartoon, that includes the ones like, do you remember when the Disney MGM Studios opened? There was a little short bit where Mickey goes into Michael Eisner's office, and Eisner looks at his watch. It's a Mickey watch, and Mickey looks at his watch, and it's a Michael Eisner watch. And then they walk down the hall to the auditorium to go see some movies, and Chernabog sits in front of Mickey Mouse. And Mickey says, could you sit down a little, please? And Chernabog rises up. And Michael Eisner, who's sitting next to Mickey, looks at him and goes, sit down. And Chernabog goes, oh, yes, Mr. Eisner. Yes, sorry, Mr. Eisner. Yes, sorry. Or do you remember that on Main Street in the cinema, they ran the Mickey thing, Mickey's Big Break, where you had all those celebrities like Mel Brooks and all of this, and this is how Mickey gets discovered. And he gets discovered by Walt Disney, played by Roy E. Disney. So that's in there, along with all of those other specials that Mickey did a little special for a Douglas Fairbanks travelogue. Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford loved Disney. In fact, Douglas Fairbanks, and he was the silent Zorro and Robin Hood and all of that. It told the story about how when he was in the South Seas, his safari was trapped by headhunters. And the only reason they got out is he had a projector with 16mm films of Mickey Mouse to run. Alice Davis, Mark Davis's wife, told me the story about how in 1978 she and Mark went to New Guinea because Mark liked to go to different countries and study art and collect art and all of that. And they said, our guide took us to this one village where they had never ever seen a foreigner before. They had never ever seen a white person. And again, we went there because we wanted to get true native art. As we approached the village, a little girl ran out from the bush wearing a Mickey Mouse t-shirt. You know, I know. Mickey Mouse, in fact, Tom Dooley, who works for Medico, and this was like the Red Cross, went to different underprivileged areas, you know, to offer medical care and whatever. When they had the big Red Cross on the side of the ship, nobody would come near it. And they got permission from Walt, and they put Mickey's face on it. and people just lined up to come inside because somehow they thought, yes, this is safe, this is friendly. You know, during the Korean War, they asked the Korean forces. They said, we're going to establish, you know, an office. How can we let people know that this is the United States? You know, so, and they said, put Mickey Mouse on it. 100% of them put Mickey Mouse on it. So, again, a truly, you know, amazing mouse, you know, and still going strong. And again, we were talking about the fact that we're debating. As far as I'm concerned, it's Mickey's 90th birthday. Disney doesn't want to do. They didn't publicize his 75th for that same reason. They didn't want kids to think that he is old. You know, and I keep saying, I was a school teacher. Kids are a lot smarter than you think. You know, they'll get it. You know, it's just like I said, oh, we're celebrating Disneyland's birthday. And they said, no. Birthdays are for people. Anniversaries are for things. All right. You know, but what will happen is people will do what people will want to do. And so, believe it or not, I've been talking for 50 minutes. And, wow, isn't that interesting? And I'm still awake. I thank you for coming. Please make sure you support the podcast. I'm not going anywhere. Again, I guess a couple of you bought books, and I'll be more than happy to autograph those for you. Remember, too, I will ask you probably two questions. I will ask, do you want it autographed or inscribed? Autograph is I'll sign my name. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Lowers the value of the book tremendously. That's all right. Inscribed means I put your name. I might put a little, you know, phrase, stay magical, whatever, you know, for that. And then the other thing is I will often ask you to spell your name. And that's not because I am just totally dense, but there is nothing worse than putting the wrong name in a book. At one book signing, a very attractive young lady came up and she said, well, make it out to Lori. And I said, well, how do you spell that? And she said, oh, well, the traditional way. I said, oh, L-O-R-I? No. I said, oh, L-O-R-R-I-E. No. I said, oh, okay. Oh, L-A-U-R-I-E. No, the traditional way. L-A-U-R-E-Y, like in Oklahoma. Oh. and so, you know, and especially now where you have kids with some of the strangest names, you know, I don't know how that works.
I think there's a bomb in that bag.
That will do. But thank you for your attention, for your time. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm looking for the bottom of it.